So Geshe started by quoting a short verse from the Vajra Essence that talks about the unexcelled mind of bodhicitta. That is something I will always generate and always practice with perfect morality. So this verse actually gives us information about a number of things. First of all, it talks about the mind that aspires to reach Buddhahood. So this is the mind of bodhicitta. So, and it says that this is unexcelled, meaning nothing surpasses this mind. Nothing surpasses this mind from various perspectives. So first of all, we have the aspiration to reach a state of Buddhahood, which is the ultimate final object of attainment in the Mahayana. And the reason why we want to do this is because we are seeking to establish our own purpose and the purpose of others. And therefore, this mind that is characterized by this double aspiration to bring about the purpose of oneself and the purpose of others, the mind that aspires to reach Buddhahood for the sake of all other sentient beings, is a mind that is unparalleled. It is unexcelled. So so we say, I will always generate this mind. So always generate here indicates the three times. There are those who have generated it, those who are generating it currently, and also obviously there is a promise to try to generate it again, always in the future. And then the question is it enough to just generate the mind of bodhicitta? And the answer is no, because even though you might generate bodhicitta, bodhicitta might decline. So, for example, when we're still on the small level of the path of accumulation in the Mahayana, it is possible that the practitioners become overwhelmed by hearing how much effort is required, how many difficulties they will have to face and overcome for over 3 countless great eons. So at this point, they might say, forget about reaching the state of Buddhahood. It is very difficult to achieve. It will take very long time. It might be best if I redirect my aim and just set my goal to obtain just the hearer or the solitary realizer state of an arhat. So this might happen, and if that happens, bodhicitta declines. And therefore, it is very important to safeguard it and keep a particular type of morality. For that reason, we make the promise that I will always safeguard my vows and train in the 6 perfections. So safeguard my vows here, it means I will avoid all the situations that are contrary to the essence of bodhicitta, and that refers to the 18 root downfalls and the 46 secondary faults. All right, so as we say, having generated the mind of bodhicitta, it is important to maintain the morality that is associated with that. So in terms of the morality here is practiced in 3 ways. The first one is to refrain from harmful activities. It's morality in that, it's ethics in that. The second one is to practice the morality of accumulating virtuous activity. And the third one is the morality of working for the benefit of other sentient beings. So for the first one, which is the morality of refraining from harmful actions, this is a direct reference to the 18 root downfalls. And then the last one, which is working for the benefit of others, includes the training in the 6 perfections. And for the middle one, which is to accumulate virtuous actions, we will see how we have, let's say, subgroups within the 46 secondary negative activities that relate to that. So when we come into that section, we will be identifying those. Okay, so another thing that we need to understand is that the ethics that safeguard against the 18 root downfalls are definitely posited as the ethics of the Bodhisattva, or the ethics of the Bodhisattva vows. However, the ethics of guarding against the 46 secondary misdeeds are not posited as the ethics of safeguarding the vows. So we always make the distinction. And as we said in the first session, there is difference between Bodhisattva vows and vows existing in the continuum of the Bodhisattva. Because you could have a person who is a Bodhisattva, but they have other types of vows. They could have Gelong vows, Getsul vows, Tantric vows, and Bodhisattva vows. So you see, in the mind stream of someone who is a Bodhisattva, if they have vows, it doesn't only has to be Bodhisattva vows. It could be other types of vows. All right. But if we're talking about the Bodhisattva vows included within the mind stream of a Bodhisattva, then this is specifically talking about the Bodhisattva vows. So, for the majority of us here in this audience, we have Tantric vows, we have Bodhisattva vows, and we have Genyen vows, which are the lay vows. So for the time being, we do not have Gelong vows of ordination. And the other thing that we need to understand is that, let's say there are many precepts, or there are many things that a bodhisattva has to practice. So, for example, a bodhisattva has the ethics of virtue that is associated with the practice of the six perfections. A bodhisattva engages the four means of gathering disciples. A bodhisattva abandons the four black karmas, and the bodhisattva practices the four white karmas. So all of these are types of morality, of ethics, but they are not technically posited as vows. They're not bodhisattva vows. So what Geshe is trying to explain here is what is the relationship between vows and ethics. If something is a vow, it must necessarily be ethics. But if something is ethics, like an ethical behavior, it doesn't necessarily have to be a vow. So, for example, you could be an individual who has decided to abandon sexual misconduct, or you have decided that you abandon stealing, right? So this is morality in terms of stopping certain types of physical activities, but this is not necessarily vows if you haven't taken it as a vow. But if you have bodhisattva vows and you want to maintain the ethics of a bodhisattva, the very minimum, and absolutely, you have to maintain the ethics of abandoning the 10 non-virtuous actions. Another thing to understand, as it is described in Vinaya, in the Bodhisattva grounds, it says that from those 18 root downfalls, it is not necessary that all of them occur for the same type of person. So this takes clarify that there are 5 of the root downfalls that apply to someone who is like a king. There are another 5 that apply to someone who has the authority of a minister. And then there are 8 that apply to ordinary people like us. So it's not necessarily that all, like you will break all 18 bodhisattva, all the 18 downfalls will occur for one particular person. For example, if we look at the 10th root downfall, the 10th root downfall is destroying places such as a village, a city, or a country. So for us ordinary people, it will be, it's very hard to come up with a scenario in which you would destroy an entire country or you will destroy an entire region. However, if you're someone like a king or the ruler, of a certain country, you do have this authority to destroy and, destroy in a mass scale. So if that ruler has the Bodhisattva vows, and they wage war against another country and they destroy villages and cities and provinces and so forth, then yes, this might happen to them. So having said this, Geshe is saying it's not the right attitude to go around when you receive the Bodhisattva vows and say, oh, well, in any case, most of them will not apply to me, and feel carefree. It's not like this. At the time that you take the vows, you should have the very firm commitment that I will do everything I can not to endanger myself through adverse conditions that might lead to all or any of those 18. Another thing to keep in mind is that, for example, with the lay vows, when we take the lay vows, there is a choice, right? You can take all 5 lay vows, or you can take 4, or you can take 3, or in any case, the minimum is we have to abandon killing. But you could say, I'm taking lay vows, but I'm only promising to avoid killing. However, I haven't promised anything in terms of sexual misconduct, right? You have a choice to choose. Okay. With the Bodhisattva vows, there is no choice. We take all Bodhisattva vows, and we have to be careful for all 18 root downfalls. Okay, so we're going back to our text. Please follow. We are on number 13. So let's look at number 13. It says, causing someone to completely give up the vows of individual liberation and enter the Mahayana. So here we're working with a scenario of someone who is very careful and really abides properly on their vows of individual liberation. So you could be talking about a gelong, and you go to that person and say, why bother with those vows of individual liberation? Why do you put your effort in that? Look instead at what you could do with the Mahayana. If you generate the mind of bodhicitta, then more or less automatically, this will stop all negative activities of your body, speech, and mind that are generated through afflictions. So if you make comments like this and you cause this person who up to that point was properly abiding on vows of individual liberation to turn away from that, they understand what you say, they say, oh, it sounds valuable, so they turn away from that, then this downfall occurs. Okay, so the next one, number 14, maintaining that the trainee vehicles do not allow the rejection of attachment and so forth, and inducing others to believe it as well. So first of all, let's clarify here the term trainee vehicles refers to the vehicles of the hearers and solitary realizers. So basically, this might occur if you comment on someone who is practicing on the hearer or the solitary realizer vehicle, and you criticize their training. And you say to them that, yes, through this practice that you follow, you could abandon some afflictions, but not all the afflictions. And you cannot be liberated from samsara. And in this way, you're belittling those who follow Hinayana. Why? Because within Hinayana practitioners, we have advanced practitioners who have obtained the path of seeing, the path of meditation. When you obtain the path of seeing and meditation, you're definitely applying proper antidotes to afflictions. So to tell them that through your training, you will not be able to abandon afflictions, like your path is incomplete, cannot give you what you're seeking for. So if you make these belittling comments, and you have Bodhisattva vows, then this downfall will occur for you. So let's look at the next one, number 15, asserting falsely. Okay, so here you're making proclamations. So let's say you go and say, I have realized emptiness, although you haven't. Or you say, I have clairvoyance, although you haven't. Or you say, I have obtained the path of accumulation, I have obtained the path of preparation, and so forth. So you're proclaiming that you have attained high states, high realizations, although you have not obtained those things. And obviously, this is done for with some inferior motivation. So if that happens, a downfall occurs. But let's examine the person who might say this. So if the person who falsely proclaims to have obtained high realizations is a gelong, by lying, first of all, they receive a defeat. So for the fully ordained monks, there is what is called the 4 defeats. So one of those defeats is telling lies. So they will receive the defeat of a gelong, which is telling lie. In addition to that, because they are a bodhisattva, so they are bodhisattva gelong, again, they will receive a downfall and another fault. So in the case of an ordained bodhisattva who falsely proclaims these realizations, there are 2 defeats occurring twice. So here, specifically, we can look at the proclaiming falsely that you have realized emptiness, and although you haven't, and then you go to other people and say, I will give you instructions on emptiness, and you should meditate the way that I instruct you. And if you do, you will become like me, a very wise person, a great scholar, someone with realizations like myself. So this type of comments can only come out of a sense of misplaced pride on oneself, because in the first place, one has not attained realization of emptiness, right? So we can see here that already within the list of 18 downfalls, we have come across 2 vows that relate to emptiness. Number 11 was explaining emptiness to unprepared beings. So explaining emptiness to the unprepared beings has to do with discussing emptiness with a bodhisattva who is not very, in terms of bodhisattvas, we have those who are sharp bodhisattvas and bodhisattvas who are not very sharp. So depending on the sharpness of their minds, some bodhisattvas will realize emptiness first and then will generate bodhicitta. But there are other bodhisattvas who first they generate bodhicitta and then will realize emptiness. So if you go to a bodhisattva who is not prepared, has not realized emptiness yet, so it's indicating that this is a bodhisattva who is not does not have the sharpest faculties, and you go and teach emptiness to them, then number 11, the 11th downfall will occur. Whilst here in number 15, it doesn't have to do with the sharpness of the mind of the other person and so forth. You're just falsely proclaiming that you have realized emptiness, and you urge them to meditate, to follow your example and become like you. Okay, so Geshe was saying, if you have any questions about the root downfalls, please ask them. One thing to keep in mind with this text, the Bodhisattva Vows contain some old language or archaic terms that are not often used. And actually, there are specific books or commentaries written to explain what those archaic terms in the Bodhisattva Vows mean. I mean, of course, these days, the translations have been modernized, but if you do have doubts, please ask and we will clarify the points. Okay, so obviously, if you have not realized emptiness and you go about teaching emptiness, although you haven't realized it, you can see the fault in the behavior, the danger in the behavior. But even if you have realized emptiness, it is very dangerous to go about and teach it to other people. So it is said that a very thorough investigation of the student has to take place before a realized teacher imparts these teachings. We have a story that of an incident that occurred at the time of Buddha Shakyamuni. At that time, the close disciples, such as Manjushri and Chenrezig and so forth, would come would appear in human aspect as fully ordained monks, and they will go around in the villages begging for alms and so forth. So they would interact with ordinary people. So on one particular occasion, Manjushri, as a monk, met a hera practitioner. And this hera practitioner was not actually someone who was mature to hear about emptiness. However, Manjushri taught him about emptiness, explaining how phenomena do not inherently exist and so forth. And this unprepared Hinayana practitioner generated great fear because he misunderstood the teaching. And he said, oh, he's telling me that nothing at all exists. So he developed those nihilistic views. And as a result of this, it was obvious that he would be reborn in the hells. He was reborn in the hells. So at the end of the day, when all the disciples came back from the villages and they gathered in the presence of Buddha Shakyamuni, the other great disciples, actually, they said, oh, well, you should know that today Manjushri did a big mistake. He taught emptiness to someone who was untrained, and we can see without clairvoyance that this person will be reborn in the hells. This is for sure. So that was not very skillful of Manjushri today. But the Buddha replied, saying that no, actually it was very skillful of Manjushri to do this, because if he had not given those teachings to that individual who was following the hera vehicle, that person would reach the nirvana of a hera. And when you reach the nirvana of a hera, you remain in that state for millions and millions of eons. And therefore, the Buddha said, instead of that person having to spend millions of eons in the hera nirvana, instead he will go to hell, but he will go to hell with those imprints of emptiness. And when his hell time finishes, he will take another rebirth. He will come back as a human. He will have those imprints. He will meet with the Mahayana, and with the imprints of emptiness, he will generate bodhicitta. He will have realization of emptiness, and therefore will become enlightened and progress in the Mahayana path much faster. So this is something that we also keep in mind. For example, when we take the tantric vows, this is the question that comes up a lot, because taking the tantric vows comes with faults or dangers, but also it comes with, let's say, special privileges. So the danger is that you take the tantric vows, and these vows are very difficult to keep properly. So you will break the vows, and because you will break the vows, this will result in rebirth in the hell. But you go to hell with the imprints of the tantric practice, and those imprints are not lost. So when you bounce out of hell in your next fortunate rebirth, you will have those tantric imprints, and then that would would speed up your progression from that point onwards. We come to the next one, number 16, which again is something that would apply to someone like a king or a minister, someone who has authority. So inflicting fines on ordained person and accepting what has been offered or what was to be offered to the three jewels. So you see, you have to be someone who has the authority to inflict a penalty, inflict a fine, and by doing this, to confiscate what was already offered or was intended to be offered to, let's say, to anyone, to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, and receive those things. So you have to be successful in redirecting, let's say, those funds, those offerings. Okay. So there's a difference between number 5, which is taking what belongs to the 3 jewels, and number 16, inflicting fines to redirect or to eventually gain what is offered to the 3 jewels. Because in the case of number 5, you directly take it, or you employ some sort of deceitful means, or you put pressure in order to take these offerings. However, here, number 16, you inflict a fine or a penalty. This is a specific way through which you take those offerings. And here also we have to explain specifically the conditions through which the downfall occurs. So for the downfall to occur, the person who is trying to take what is offered to the 3 jewels must be a bodhisattva. And upon being successful, they should be thinking, oh, good, I got it for myself. It is mine now. So if they generate this mind of, oh, I was successful, I got it, then the downfall occurs. However, if there is a reason of, let's say, taking these particular offerings and then again dedicating them towards the 3 jewels, then this is no downfall. All right. Okay. So number 17, causing someone to give up meditation of serenity and giving the belongings of good meditators to those who recite prayers. Okay, well, I'm laughing here because it is a case of old archaic terms, and it can be misleading. All right, so first of all, when does that happen? You must have a particular motivation. So you interfere basically with someone who is meditating on serenity, someone who does a calm abiding retreat, meditates on calm abiding, all right? But you have to interfere there out of anger. So your motivation is anger for whatever reason. And you give the belongings of this good meditator to someone who recite prayers. So recite prayers here does not refer to our daily recitation of prayers. We all recite prayers. It makes a contrast between, there are some, if you do meditation on calm abiding, you lead a very quiet retreat. You're not chanting all the time. And then there are other monks who are not doing calm abiding retreat, or monks or practitioners. And they're very busy doing pujas and chanting, right? And you decide that the ones who are chanting all the time are more worthy than the meditator who does calm abiding retreat. So here, another condition, because it says giving the belongings of this meditator to the other group. If the practitioner who does the calm abiding retreat says, here, take this possession and give it to somebody else, then there is no downfall. But if the meditator has not given you their provisions, has not given you permission to remove their provisions, and you take them and you give them to those who do pujas and chanting and so forth, then the downfall occurs. Okay, we come to the last one, which is a very heavy one, the 18th, forsaking the spirit of enlightenment. So if you give up on your aspiring bodhicitta, immediately there is a downfall, a rude downfall. If you remember already from the beginning, we mentioned that usually most of those deeds become downfalls when the 4 binding factors are in place. But for 2 of them, which is number 9, holding wrong views, and number 18, which is giving up your mind of bodhicitta, as soon as this occurs, it doesn't have to do anything with the 4 binding factors being present or not. The downfall occurs. These things are very heavy. So the 4 binding factors are not considering the action to be wrong, not wishing to refrain in the future, taking pleasure and enjoying doing it, and feeling no shame or embarrassment for this activity. So, very important for number 9 and number 18. They are so heavy, they are so serious, they do not require the 4 binding factors. So, to clarify here, for number 9, holding false views, it refers to specific false views, such as, for example, denying the law of cause and effect, denying the existence of past and future lives, denying the existence of the 3 jewels. Okay, so these are specific false views, because otherwise we can have wrong views about many things, like, how do you define lack of true existence? And, you get it wrong. So it is not the case of the false view that cause you to break a bodhisattva, to have a bodhisattva downfall. All right. So it's not just a general misunderstanding of the view. There are specific wrong views. Okay, so for number 9, the type of false views that cause you to experience root downfall in your bodhisattva vows is holding the wrong views that the law of cause and effect does not exist, past and future lives don't exist, the 3 jewels, they do not exist. And the reason for that is because to even generate the mind of bodhicitta, you must have trained in the common practices of the individual, of the small scope and the middle scope. And these trainings, they include, they rely upon accepting the existence of past and future lives. You have a presentation of the law of karma, cause and result. So if you completely deny those fundamental things, you cannot actually sustain, you cannot even generate bodhicitta. So in terms of the Bodhisattva vows, we said here that holding false views, giving up the mind of enlightenment, or having all 4 binding factors present definitely will cause a root downfall. So we have this expression saying a downfall occurs, or you break the vows, or you abandon the vows. But also we know that we have a case of the vows declining, which is not the same thing. When the vows decline, it's quite easy to restore them. We have to offer a confession with the 4 opponent powers present, and then we can restore the vows. Okay, so as we said, for 16 out of those 18 bodhisattva vows, for the full downfall to occur, all 4 binding factors must be present. However, if not all 4 of them are present, then you do not have a full downfall, but what happens is that it becomes like a secondary negative activity. So let's look at for example, at the first one, the first Bodhisattva vows. It belongs to the group of 16 that require the 4 binding factors. It says, out of attachment, of gain and honors, praising yourself and belittling others. So let's say that you do that thing, but you do not consider this action to be wrong, right? That's the first binding factor. You have no wish to obtain in the future, to abstain from that activity in the future. You actually find no problem repeating it, or you take pleasure in this, or you have no feeling of shame and embarrassment about the action, right? So if you have all 4, it will become a downfall. But if you don't have all 4, if you only have, let's say, 2 or 3 of them, then it becomes a smaller case. Or if you only have 1, but not the other 3, then it becomes like a secondary misdemeanor, let's say. So Geshe says, I have given you the basic presentation here of the 18 root downfalls. It is very important. You have the translations. There are various translations in English to recite those things every day. And that daily, it's like the daily it's like a daily revision where you examine and you say, am I doing any of those things? If you find out that you are doing those things, then it is very important to generate a sense of regret and then continue with proper purification. But you will see with those things, even if you didn't have the Bodhisattva vows, all of these activities are faulty activities. They're not good. There's no good behavior if you go around doing all of those things. And if we engage in this type of activities, even if we didn't have the Bodhisattva vows, all this negativity will stop us from accumulating virtue, from being able to work towards building up our virtue. Okay, so the next thing is to continue now with the 46 auxiliary negative actions. All right, so the term auxiliary here indicates that they are not as heavy as the root downfall. Are they negative actions? Yes, they are negative actions. However, they are not as heavy. And within this list of 46, we will find that there are many variations. Some of them are certainly afflictions or influenced by afflictions. Some of them are both afflictions and negativity, but we will see that some of them really depend on the motivation, the way that you carry the activity, the type of person you are, or the type of person you affect by this action. So there's a lot to be considered here with the 46 secondary. Okay, so we start with the first one, which is not making the 3 offerings to the 3 jewels. So you are a Buddhist, you are a Mahayana practitioner, and you are someone who has the Bodhisattva vows. If you are those things, then it is very important that 3 times a day or every day, let's start like this, every day you make offerings to the 3 jewels. And this, it mentions here 3 offerings, and the 3 offerings specifically refers to offering 3 prostrations. 3 prostrations during the day, 3 prostrations at night. The reason why we do this is because the 3 jewels are the object of our refuge. So with great faith and respect, we go for refuge to them. They are the ones who protect us, and therefore we make offerings of 3 prostrations and other offerings to them. Okay, so important here to differentiate between refuge and the objects of refuge. The objects of refuge are the 3 jewels, the ones who protect us, whilst refuge is faith and sense of total reliance to them.